Welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane Kay. Today, I'll be breaking down the next episode of Seeking Sister Wife, Season 1, Episode 4, entitled 13 is Enough. Wednesday or Thursday, I should come out with the next episode of Becoming Sister Wives Book Club, Chapter 3, Christine and Cody, and Friday or Saturday will be the next episode of my Sister Wives Rewatch commentary covering Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Wife Number 3 Hits Sin City. As I recall, Cody says or does something awkward at the wax museum, and this is way before the Browns reveal they are moving to the city of sin. We also learn that Christine doesn't know how to use a microwave to make eggs, just like of course we know she prefers not to use toasters since toasters kill more people than sharks every year. But she also almost started a fire burning the toast made the safe way in her oven, so there's that. Anyways, for now, let's get into today's episode of Seeking Sister Wife. Last episode, just as a quick refresher since it's been a while since I did an episode on this playlist, Ashley and Dimitri met 22-year-old Jocelyn in real life, and she will be going on a one-on-one date and do much more than that with Dimitri this episode. Melina stood up the Aldridges last episode at the airport, and it was particularly crushing to Charisse, Jeff's second wife. The Briney wives, second wife Arlie and third wife Angela, try to communicate with April, the first wife of Drew Briney, and she tries to play victim and deflect on the other wives rather than own her behavior. April is very manipulative, in my opinion, with Drew and the other wives, further complicating the polygamous dynamic that is already inherently complicated. Some of April's behaviors hearken to Robin Brown's behaviors. They both give me the nails on a chalkboard types of feelings. The episode opens in American Fork, Utah with the Brineys. Drew and his first wife, April, are celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary. She says it's a pretty big deal, just like some of the Browns pronounce it. So I think it's a Utah accent that we're hearing when we hear like really and Dell and all sorts of things like that with the Browns. I think it's just a Utah thing. As we know, April has since divorced Drew. April says the 20th anniversary milestone is one of those anchor points where you look back and think, wow, they have been through a lot of transitions, but they are trying their best to figure it out and make it work come what may. April appreciates that about Drew. April says he still likes me after all this time, and that's good. She can't believe it's been 20 years, but Drew can. Drew is folding clothes to pack away for their weekend, and he can believe it. I'm sure for Drew, the time didn't fly by. They've already had 2 kids move out, we learn. Drew explains he splits time evenly among all his wives, but when it comes to special occasions like birthdays or anniversaries, he tries to do something to make his wives feel extra loved and special. When the budget allows, he will take his wives on short 1 to 3 day trips. Drew acknowledges 20 years is a huge milestone, so he wants to do something extra special. He's been wanting to take April horseback riding for a while, so he rented a place with a horseback riding track and a cabin so they can horseback ride together. April explains that things have been pretty tense in the house and she is having lots of difficulties with her sister wives right now, and it's crazy stressful for her. Maybe if April were less manipulative and controlling of everyone involved and she looked out for the interests of the group rather than just her own self-interests, it wouldn't be so stressful on the relationship dynamics or on her. All that negative energy is tiring and heavy and so unnecessary, in my opinion. But April's cause of stress is April. She is her own worst enemy who creates that constant stress and friction for herself and her family members with her behavior and manipulations, in my opinion. April is appreciating that Drew has put so much thought and energy into this trip. She says it's important for them to get away to have some alone time so they relax and connect. April says as a family, they all love anniversaries and every wife is so excited when it's their turn. She says it's really nice to be able to connect one-on-one and not as a mom and to have adult conversations. Arlie, Drew's second wife, says the wives don't get jealous of each other when it comes to anniversaries or trips. Drew mentions he'll get a few comments from his other wives like, I hope you guys have a really nice trip because she seems really tense lately, or I hope you make her feel happy so she is nice to me when you get back. Wow, who could the wives want to be less tense and happier so they are nicer when they return? I wonder at that. Drew says he only hears it on occasion, but my guess is it's always regarding April. We know Arlie and Angela get along and Drew has smooth relationships with them, so that just leaves April, of course. Drew puts things as diplomatically as possible, and it must be tough walking on eggshells constantly to avoid tripping the wire. No one in the family would want to be witness to that aftermath. After Drew mentions that he is laughing with his wives, but April isn't laughing because she knows the reality, I'm sure. Angela says, after the way that April reacted in their last discussion about the mattresses, she is feeling really insecure and she doesn't know how to bring resolution to the situation. Arlie says watching April's children as April and Drew go off on their weekend, she sees as a great opportunity to hopefully help her relationship with April go in a more positive direction. Next up, in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Aldridges are having lunch after Milena, a potential third sister wife, stood them up at the airport. Jeff says it's good to let it all go. He says they don't know what happened to Melina or why she was a no-show. Melina won't answer their calls, so the Aldridges are regrouping and trying to figure out what happened. Vanessa, Jeff's first wife, also Aspen of Sister Wives, sister-in-law, says she was really excited to meet Melina in person because she felt that was the time when she was going to be able to open up and connect with her. Vanessa explains because she is pregnant and completely worn out and tired all the time, she didn't make as deep of a connection with Melina as Charisse, and so she feels bothered that for Charisse's sake, Melina couldn't just say, I'm not coming. Vanessa asks Charisse how she is, and Charisse was very close to Melina, so she isn't happy about it, but she feels better than she did at the airport. She's got a headache over it all, just from the emotions of it. Charisse explains it's difficult to find women interested in living the polygamous lifestyle. There are few and far between, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Melina was a good fit for their family, and it has been a while since they found someone with potential. And it's hard when you have your hopes up and you're looking forward to something to have it taken away. Vanessa tells Charisse she is the most hurt by this situation because she had the deepest relationship with Melina, so it will take her more time to recover from it. Charisse isn't opposed to moving forward and looking for another potential sister wife, but she wishes she had more closure when it comes to Melina. She recognizes she might never get that or hear from her again. It feels to me, and I'm not suggesting they had romantic feelings at all, but it feels to me Charisse is heartbroken, almost like when a romantic love fails and you break up, and you desperately want closure, a finality with a softer ending. Charisse admits she might never know what happened. Vanessa explains to Charisse and Jeff they still have each other and their same relationships they entered into this with. It isn't like they have lost their other half. Everyone is still here, so that should give them comfort. Jeff says now they need to all spend time with the family and do things together with the kids, and he thinks that will drag them out of the valley of sorrow and they will just look forward. Back to Atlanta with the Snowdens, Dimitri is so happy that he is singing shitty impromptu jingles. He's so excited he has a date today. And Ashley comes into the room and informs him she just put the kids to bed. Basically, shut the fuck up. Dimitri explains Jocelyn came all the way from Seattle and they went on their first date, and that went very well. And as we recall, that was a date between he and Ashley and Jocelyn. And Dimitri is now looking to spend some more time with Jocelyn on a solo date. He tells Ashley he's excited. His eyes look like a kid at FAO Schwartz toy store surrounded by mountains of toys in every direction. He's so excited and he just can't hide it. He's even laying his clothes out on the bed. He tells Ashley she said yes, gleefully, almost in disbelief at his luck. And a very pregnant Ashley acknowledges she did say yes. He's laughing excitedly. Dimitri can't contain his joy. And he says he wants to dwell in this moment. It's amazing. He didn't know what to do, so he got a whole bunch of outfit choices because he wasn't sure what to get and he wanted to look nice. It looks like there are maybe 8+ outfits laid out on his bed, and Ashley comments that it looks like he bought the whole store. It sure does. Ashley explains, tonight is Dimitri's solo date with Jocelyn, and she is helping Dimitri pick out what he wants to wear. Dimitri tries on all his outfits as Ashley critiques and decides what is best for his first date with the 22-year-old, as she is very pregnant, by the way, and will stay home with the kids. He's in tight pants, so he does what he calls the man stretch, and he basically thrusts his crotch area. It's disgusting. And Ashley asks him, please don't do that. And I agree. She says most women would have a hard time knowing that their husband is on a date with another woman. But for her, it's pretty natural because it's a part of them getting to discover and know this person, because not only are they as a couple going to have a relationship with her, he will have a relationship with her and she will have a relationship with her. So it's important that Dimitri and Jocelyn connect, and there is no need to feel jealous. I know Ashley paints herself as above jealousy and good with this, but being super pregnant with 2 kids and your husband or your partner, the father of your kids, going on a date with a younger woman he might marry to and add to the family has to bother her on some level or cause some jealousy or insecurity or stress or worry. I don't believe she doesn't feel a thing and it's natural and all good. I highly doubt that. In my opinion, that's BS. But that's just my opinion, of course. Dimitri is in one outfit and Ashley suggests he try a certain shirt. And Dimitri asks Ashley if he is looking good so far. And he asks her, you want this man candy? Vomit in my mouth. I hate ego. Even if he just means it as a cheesy joke, it's still gross. And it implies Dimitri believes he looks good. And even if he looked good, which I don't think he does, that makes him seem very unattractive. Good-looking men don't need to say it. They know how good they look. They know they look good. They don't need to mention it. Kind of like penis size. If a man talks about it, it's nothing to write home about. It's the men that don't talk about it, who know they are blessed with the goods, that never need to mention it. Look out for the quiet ones, in my opinion. The showboats are all talk and no substance. Anyways, Ashley says she does want the man candy. He asks, Ashley, do you want me to stay home? And he does more disgusting thrusting in his tight pants as if he thinks it's sexy or a turn on. This guy has no self-awareness, just like another polygamous sex god in his own mind, Cody Brown, who likes to flex in the mirror and ask his wives if he looks bigger. It's the same type of look at me behavior where they perceive themselves as looking good when really they look pathetic. After the thrusting, Ashley tells him no, definitely go on your date with all of that, because Dimitri had asked her, do you want me to stay home? She says, definitely go on your date with all of that. She finds his thrusting disgusting too. She tells him, take that to her. And he actually does, literally. We will learn. Ashley tells Dimitri she would snatch him up and make him hers all over again when he's done getting dressed and accessorizing with a denim vest, orange pocket square, and orange tie over a 2 sizes too small button-down shirt. He's trying to look cool and hipster. I would just want people to come as they are, as they usually are naturally. I don't need or want the tie or extra fluff just to make a false impression or to try and impress me when it's not the normal you. Ashley says while she gets the physical attraction, they're looking for a forever wife, so they created rules, and Dimitri explains for them, intimacy takes place at the point of commitment. Once they agree this is the one, then intimacy is exercised. Dimitri leaves for his date, and I want to point out all his bazillion outfits he bought that day are laid out on the bed for Ashley to put away. Ashley wants to go to bed, and he wasn't even considerate to clear his fashion show mess off of the bed before leaving. If he lived alone, it doesn't matter, but his wife shares his bed, and he's out for the night. She's heading to bed, filled with his clothing explosion he didn't clean up. It's not her mess to clean. Anyways, next up, we're in Park City, Utah with April and Drew Briney on their 20th anniversary horseback riding weekend getaway. April always wanted to ride horses, so this is awesome for her. Drew says it's rare in a plural family for him to have the opportunity to take a trip with one of his wives, so when they do have a special occasion, he does everything he can to make it as special as possible. Drew reveals April recently told him she feels like he isn't giving her enough attention. So between that and the tension at home, which she creates mostly, I might add, Drew feels she really needs this time off. April thinks it's nice they don't have the kids to worry about and it's some nice quality time. Drew says the conflict between April and Arlie was not because they moved into the house together. It's something that comes and goes. There's a conflict every once in a while, and it's just a question of what it's going to be about, and difficulties like this are multiplied in larger families. Drew is very honest about the dynamics and difficulties, and he gives his take openly, without trying to sweep the tough stuff that comes with polygamy under the rug to make things all appear shiny and perfect. And Drew also does his best to be fair and equal with his wives to the best of his abilities, and he seems very intelligent and self-aware and very willing to make an effort. And he lives a lifestyle for faith reasons. So he seems to do a much better job than Cody at living the lifestyle in a fairer, healthier way. I like Drew, and also the Dargers had a healthier dynamic, and the Williams family of My 5 Wives who left the faith but still made the effort to make the lifestyle work because they love their family and each other, so they made the efforts. I'm still not saying polygamy is easy or healthy or beneficial, but I do think there are much healthier functioning examples of the lifestyle than the Browns. If we recall, the professor who studied polygamy on Sister Wives said the success of the family and the relationships under a polygamous system is largely dependent on the husband and his personality type, and him not picking an obvious favorite. Also being fair and equal across the board and having enough money to support everyone. He also mentioned the success was dependent on the sister wives being friends and all looking out for the other's best interests at heart. So in this family, the husband is diplomatic and fair, and he does his best to do things fair and equal with the utmost care. He's a lawyer, and they never mention finances or any difficulties. He doesn't appear to have a favorite wife, but we do know that one wife doesn't get along with the others and is more selfish and needy and manipulative to get her way. And everyone in the family calls her out. One wife puts her self-interests above the group's. So it's interesting to see how that plays out when the husband doesn't have a favorite and calls out the bad behavior with his wives rather than adding to that toxicity like Cody does with Robin on Sister Wives. It's interesting how all these little differences in personality and approach really affect the family dynamics in different ways. Drew and April ride horses during their anniversary getaway, and we learn Drew has back issues, and his physical therapist told him the physical movement of riding on a horse would be good to keep his back adjusted, and it's important for him that April has a good time and a great trip above all else. Back at the Brineys, the kids are all playing and riding bikes and jumping on trampolines. It looks fun, to be honest. And it makes me wish I were a kid again with no responsibilities but school and homework and finishing my plate and playing outside. You only appreciate what you had when it's gone. And I wish I appreciated being a kid with no responsibility back then. Instead, I was in a rush to grow up. But in hindsight, things always are seen differently than we once perceived them in the moment, of course. Arlie explains that while Drew and April are away, she and Angela are there with the kids, holding down the fort. Arlie says she and April are not on the best of terms, so she hopes by her watching April's kids, it can be a good, positive bank account deposit. The kids are hungry, so they are trying to get lunch done as fast as possible. One kid cut their toe, and Arlie says she is trying to have everything under control, and she laughs. The kids are running in the house. It seems very hectic, and Angela warns them not to. Angela says it's been a hectic day. They are all trying to keep up with everything that needs to be done to maintain an average day of life for the Briney family. She says it's one thing to be a new mother of an infant and another to be a mother figure to 14 kids. And she is still getting to know all of Drew's kids and trying to bond with them and create good relationships with them. It's really overwhelming, she says. Arlie says she is doing the best she can, and considering all of the things that are happening all at one time, it's okay. Back in Atlanta with the Snowdens, Dimitri meets Jocelyn for their date. He says when you're dating again, a million things go through your mind like, am I attractive? Do I still have it? Will I look okay to her? He's a bit nervous. In my opinion, especially in his situation, looking for a second partner, having one already with 2 kids and one on the way, he is nervous about all the wrong things. Chemistry and attraction is important, but ultimately, he is supposedly looking for a member of an already established family. So it's not like he's young, just starting off. He has an established family, so one would think it would be more nervousness about intellectual connections and mindset connections and personality type compatibilities and values. It wouldn't be concerned over superficial, ego-driven things. Like, will she like my looks? Will she find me attractive? That would be a secondary concern in his situation, one would think. Jocelyn says after meeting Ashley and Dimitri, she definitely feels that she is ready to be a sister wife. So tonight, she is hoping to find out if she and Dimitri are compatible. She says she loves Ashley, but she'd be Dimitri's wife. So she wants to see if they have that spark. Jocelyn feels really nervous, but it's like that, oh my God, this is the first date nervous. She's all laughing and smiles and giggly, and she says she is even tingling in her toes. Dimitri tells cameras all he can say is wow. He is also all giddy and smiles, and he says her eyes, everything about her, her smell, it's just he's excited. He's elated. Is he elated or is his little brain getting elevated? And who mentions a person's smell as something that excites them? It's so weird. Dimitri thinks they will have a wonderful night. He asks Jocelyn how her day was since their lunch date, and she says it was good, but she has been anticipating their one-on-one date all day. Dimitri has been nervous, he tells her. He has had every single piece of clothing thrown on a bed. He doesn't add, he left it for Ashley to clean. And he was trying to figure out what to wear. Jocelyn asks if Ashley helped him pick his outfit, and he admits she did. He tells Jocelyn he is mesmerized by her right now. Keep in mind, Dimitri is in his late 30s, and Jocelyn is around 22, and she seems incredibly naive and green. So Dimitri telling her things like your eyes, your smell, I'm mesmerized, feels very creepy and manipulative in my opinion, almost as if he's grooming her. Jocelyn is all giggles, and next, Dimitri tells Jocelyn, I love your eyes. They are very come hither, he says. To me, it feels like he is grooming her and he knows he can say the right words and she is young and naive and green and attracted to him, so he can manipulate her very easily. This feels very creepy and pervy and gross to me. Jocelyn thanks him and Dimitri says, no, thank you. I get to see your eyes. I get to look at your eyes, so thank you. Gross. I don't like bullshit. I'd see right through this. I don't like too many compliments and love bombing right off the bat. It feels very false and manipulative and disingenuous. Next, Jocelyn says she loves his smile. It brightens everything. And he asks, you think so? This guy is ego-driven and manipulative as fuck, if you ask me. I get bad vibes. They do shots, probably so Dimitri can get her inhibitions down, and he asks her, so tell me, what are you thinking? And she says she was thinking, did Ashley really like her? She was really worried about it. Dimitri tells Jocelyn she does like her. We learn Jocelyn is 14 years Dimitri's junior, but he says there are younger women around that age that are very, very mature, and he thinks there is a lot of potential with Jocelyn. So he thinks this could be something really great. Dimitri addresses splitting time and how that would work. He says he is one man with one body, and he asks Jocelyn how she feels about that. Jocelyn says as long as they feel that they make the best of their time together, there's no problem. She asks how Dimitri would go about that. She asks if he has certain days. Dimitri says he ideally doesn't want to have a defined schedule. He doesn't want to have a chart on the refrigerator where it says Ashley, Jocelyn, Ashley, Jocelyn. Neither does Jocelyn. She says it feels so generic to her to have schedules. Jocelyn wants it to go naturally, as Dimitri said. Dimitri says the conversation is great. It's extremely fluid. They're engaging each other and vibing off of each other's questions. He says there are sparks flying, and more so than he would have anticipated. Jocelyn asks Dimitri if he believes in love at first sight. If that question doesn't reveal her naivety, I don't know what would. Dimitri does believe in it. He believes in fairy tales. And Jocelyn believes in love at first sight. She says you feel something, and even if you can't articulate what it is, you just feel it. Dimitri is all smiles. He's on cloud nine. He's high off of this evening, he says. He tells Jocelyn he doesn't want it to end, and neither does she. He wonders if they will do kisses on the first night. He tells cameras he doesn't know. He thinks they'll have to see what happens. Jocelyn says she has a ride coming in a few minutes. She asks Dimitri what he thinks after their dinner as they're standing outside the restaurant, and he thinks he's ready for another date, and Jocelyn is as well. She's excited. She says, wow. Wow is the word. It was amazing. The whole time they talked about so much, and they have to do it again. She can't wait. She says he seems perfect so far. She gets in her ride. They hug goodbye. Dimitri squeezes her tight, and she says to him, your squeezes are serious. And he tells her he has to make sure that she has to understand that it's good, that everything's good. After the film crew left for the night, Dimitri and Jocelyn secretly met up, and we don't see it, of course, but TLC flashes it in words across the screen. Back to Park City, Utah, and Drew and April Briney's 20th anniversary horseback riding weekend away. Drew and April are having lunch, and Drew has so much back pain he is breathing hard and shifting on his bench, saying, ow. He gave April her horseback riding dream, knowing he had back pain enough to see a therapist, who reportedly told him horseback riding would be okay. But now Drew looks to be in a world of pain just so he could please April. April asks if his back is giving him a hard time today, and Drew reveals the pain is about as bad as it's ever been since he broke his back. I wouldn't encourage my husband to go horseback riding with a healed, broken back, knowing it's possible it will exacerbate his pain on an anniversary trip, whether I enjoy horseback riding or not. I wonder if April wanted this since it was always her dream, with no regard to Drew's physical pain, or if he knew that she wanted it and he booked it knowing he would be in a world of pain, but putting pleasing his wife ahead of his own physical pain. If I was his wife, either way, I would insist not to do anything that I know would leave Drew in pain. April says Drew is in a lot of pain after horseback riding, but he's insisting that they continue their trip, probably because if he is honest, he knows she will flip out. April apologizes to Drew, and you can see the pain on his face and in his eyes, that it's really, really bad. And she says this, on top of everything else, is a heavy load to bear. Drew is wincing in pain. April apologizes, but her husband's pain doesn't suppress her appetite. He asks her, so how are things going at home? Are things getting better? And April says she feels misunderstood, and it seems the more effort she tries to put in, it ends up just blowing up in her face and making it worse. Drew explains that April and Arlie have had issues on and off for the last 12 years. Drew was hoping third wife Angela coming in would be able to soften things out, but it takes time and it's not happening as much as he'd like yet. I wonder if this is a common polygamous notion because Christine of the Brown family mentioned being the buffer when she came in as a third wife, and Cody acknowledged it lessened the issues between Mary and Janelle, and he appreciated not having that stress as a result of Christine coming into the family. And Christine has mentioned that they say when two wives aren't finding that equilibrium and they aren't getting along, to add a third. So I wonder if that's some erroneous, commonly held notion. And by the way, in my opinion, bringing in a new wife is just a temporary fix. Even to this day, even in the Brown family, Janelle and Mary are civil to each other, but there are still very deep issues and resentments between them. Even in the current season, Janelle was having serious PTSD over the pond issue, and there was serious worry that if Mary had the property with the drainage ditch they glorify as a pond with the runoff water mixed with prairie dog plague infested dirt, that the kids and wives might not always have access to the pond, or that Mary might be bothered with the traffic. As we know, for both Janelle and Christine, it brought up the Lehigh house situation, where because Mary didn't like traffic through her area of the one big house, and you would have to walk through her area to access Christine's basement section from the inside, she would make everyone in the family bundle up, even in winter, and go downstairs and around through the outside, and that tension and conflict was still so palpable that Janelle and Christine were worried about the pond they glorify, which is really a drainage ditch for prairie dog infested drainage water. And they were very worried about access to this pond at all times should Mary get the property. So it's deep and it's still there. And maybe they are civil and they set the past history aside and they set the grievances aside. But rest assured, it's still there. Christine coming in was no fix. It just shoved down all of their issues out of necessity alone. The third wife really fixed nothing. It's just a band-aid, not a permanent fix, in my opinion. Drew explains his back was hurting before riding horses, and it was getting increasingly worse and worse, but he was trying to ignore it because it was an anniversary trip. But all of a sudden, it just flared up so badly. He gets up, he can barely walk. He has to get flat on the ground. He's cramping and writhing in pain really badly, and you can see he is genuinely in like a severe level 10 type of pain. Drew explains this happens rarely, but when it does, he is totally incapacitated. April tries to massage him. She says it's hard to watch someone in pain and not know what to do. Next up are the Aldridges. They gather all the kids outside to tell them the news that Vanessa is pregnant. Each kid gets handed a bag with a t-shirt that tells them they will have a new brother or sister. Charisse shares that Milena not showing up was a letdown for their family, but I think it's really mostly affecting her. She says they're trying to help each other and it's nice that they have their whole family to lean on to help them focus on the happy things and the blessings they do have. And one such blessing is Vanessa's new baby. Each kid gets a shirt with the number kid they are, and there is a onesie for number 8. And Jeff asks the kids who number 8 is. Vanessa asks the kids if they should have another Aldridge baby, and they thankfully say yes. And she asks, what if there's already one in my tummy? And the kids are really excited. They excitedly jump up and down. Vanessa says every time they have a new addition to their family, a new baby, it's just really exciting, not just for the adults, but to see that excitement in the children as well. Jeff asks how many more babies they should have, and one kid suggests 100. Vanessa is glad she got the secret out finally. It's been hard to keep it from the kids. She hasn't been feeling that good lately, and it's been on her mind, and she doesn't have to hide it any longer. Back in Park City, Utah, April walks Drew to the car, and he tells her she is driving since he can barely walk. April is helping him get to the car. She says she has seen Drew go through a lot, but this is the most pain she has ever seen him have to bear. She managed to get Drew into the car, and her main focus is to get him to the cabin and to help him manage the pain he has right now. We learn, luckily, Drew has crutches he keeps in the back of his car for these situations. If Drew knew he broke his back and that this happens sometimes to the point where he keeps crutches in his car because he will become incapacitated at any moment, why go horseback riding for an extended time knowing this will easily happen? They go back to the cabin, and April got a call from Angela, who said that the tire swing broke and the whole tree branch broke off that was supporting the tire swing while April and Drew's daughter, Kira, was on the swing. The whole tree limb fell on Kira's back. The skin is bruised badly and raised. Arlie took Kira to the hospital, and she will call April when she reaches the hospital. Arlie is trying to get Kira admitted, and she puts the nurse on duty with April on the phone. Before she can admit Kira, April's 7-year-old daughter, she needs April's permission. Arlie had to say that she was the babysitter at the hospital. Even though she is Drew's wife, she isn't his legal wife, so it's the safest thing to say that she is the babysitter, because if anyone were to look into their family, there's always a risk that they could report them, and they don't want a crisis on their hands. Drew wants April to ask Arlie if she feels like there are broken bones or it's just bruising, and Arlie says she thinks it's a possibility that Kira has damaged vertebrae. April says it's wrenching her heart. She wonders, should she drive down there to be with her daughter? Should she stay with Drew, who can barely even walk? April asks Arlie if she should drive down there. She asks how she feels about things, and Arlie tells her there's no need for her to go home. If my kid got hurt to the point where they need a hospital check, I'd be going home, and I'd send another wife to go bring my husband home and watch their kids once I know what's up with my kid. I don't even think it's a choice. I'd have to be there. There would be no question. Arlie tells April she will handle it and call her when she has more info. April says she is really grateful that she has Arlie, and Drew is grateful too. April is really torn because she has only seen Drew one other time this bad, and she feels Drew needs her here, and Kira, her daughter, needs her there. April tells Drew he doesn't seem like he can do anything right now. Drew says he can wing it alone if he needs to, and if Kira needs surgery or it's anything serious, he definitely wants her to go and to be there making Choices. April says she is supposed to be having this romantic 20th year anniversary getaway, but Drew hurt his back and he's in excruciating pain. And she hasn't heard from Arlie yet to see how Kira is doing. So she is really concerned for her and she is waiting to find out, hoping she's okay. Arlie finally calls and everything is okay. Kira is home. She didn't have any breaks. She just had very deep bruising and bad scrapes. April is so grateful everything is okay with her daughter Kira and that Arlie handled everything perfectly fine. She says today shows one of the benefits of this lifestyle, and it was so nice to have someone there for her daughter that loves her and cares about her. And she says it's a miracle because that could have killed her daughter. She thanks Arlie and she says she's grateful that Arlie is so level-headed when it comes to these things. Arlie says if she was in April's shoes, she'd be stressed out of her mind, so April can set all of those stresses aside now. And she tells April she is so sorry that happened at all. And April says, although she and Arlie haven't been getting along superbly lately, what Arlie did today, taking care of Kira, has brought a positive turning point for both of them. Drew asks how Kira's spirits are, and she talks to her parents on the phone. Arlie says, in the end, sometimes bad things need to happen to remind us what's really important, to realize that they can be there for each other. They are a family, and not only that, but look what kind of a team they make. Angela says, based on what happened this weekend, she hopes things will change with April soon, but she doesn't think it's going to bring about any real change, and the pattern will just keep repeating itself. And unfortunately, I have to agree with Angela. I agree with her 100%. I think she knows what's up. April and Drew are very relieved. Back in Atlanta with the Snowdens, Ashley looks tense on the couch the next morning with her coffee. She explains that Dimitri had a solo date with Jocelyn last night, and when she went to bed, he still wasn't home. So she is looking forward to hearing how his date went. Ashley asks late night when Dimitri emerges, and he says, yeah, it was a long night. She tells him, spill it. Dimitri says they had their one-on-one date last night, and things went a bit further than they initially planned. He's nervous to tell Ashley about what happened. Dimitri tells Ashley she came in and she had a black dress on and she looked wonderful in it. He tells Ashley she took the sake straight like a shot. He says it was hot. Has this man never done a sake bomb? Also, why is he trying to paint Jasmine as intoxicated as if that's to blame for his cheating and bad behavior? Dimitri's trying to deflect and blame her drinking a bit much and the alcohol didn't make Jocelyn accidentally fall on top of Dimitri at all, and Dimitri could have stopped before going too far. Or maybe not met Jocelyn privately after their date if he wanted to respect his wife. I don't blame the alcohol or Jocelyn's alcohol consumption. I blame Dimitri. He wanted to think with his little brain. He wanted his way. Consequences be damned. Respect to his wife and kids and the boundaries of their agreement be damned. He wanted to get it in, so he willingly and intentionally did. And it's fine for him to hook up if, as a team, he and his partner agree to it. But they hadn't yet. Their agreement, as I recall, was upon commitment, then intimacy comes into play. But this was the first date, and Dimitri totally jumped the gun without getting on the same page with Ashley first, as they agreed on. That was the first one-on-one date, so it was mad disrespectful to his partner and their parameters as a couple and what they agreed on. In my opinion, he's a damn fool. He's an ego-driven, gross, narcissistic, chameleon-like type of guy. He gives me major pervy vibes like a creeper who thinks he's smooth when really he's a manipulator big time. He says Jocelyn throwing back the sake shot straight was hot. Whenever I do sushi, I get sake and I don't typically sip it. It's weird that he thought that was hot. Ashley says like a 22-year-old would, and Dimitri says it was real good conversation. They talked about so much. They covered everything. Homeschooling, children. Is he going to tell Ashley his idiotic lines about her come hither eyes and her smell and all the other empty bullshit he threw at her as he plied her with alcohol too? Ashley asks if there is anything she wasn't open to, and she says it sounds like Jocelyn is pretty amenable. Dimitri says he doesn't think there's anything that was a stalk, no. Ashley asks anything else? What else? Dimitri says after dinner they did go out to some place to have a nightcap and a couple drinks. She asks, so that sake bomb wasn't enough? Dimitri explains they were getting ready to close the restaurant, so they had to find another venue. Ashley asks, did anything happen? Dimitri says, yeah, actually, just as Ashley takes a sip of her drink and damn near chokes on it. She says it went down the wrong hole because she thought she heard him say something. And he says, yeah, we were intimate. Why are all polygamists, whether living the lifestyle out of faith or just as a lifestyle choice in a secular way, so prudish with calling sex sex? They weren't intimate. They had sex. Why not call a spade a spade? They call it intimacy. With the Browns, they dance around calling sex by name. And even the Snowdens, who just do it as a lifestyle choice, say intimacy because they know it appears to cushion the blow for the other partner. A man can rotate nights and have multiple sex partners, no problem under this lifestyle. But when it comes to calling sex sex, they have to cloak it with intimacy and be decent. Give me a fucking break. It's so ridiculous that for them, it's okay to have multiple sex partners in a family structure, but they can never call it sex. It's always referred to as intimacy. Okay, ran over. To Dimitri's "we were intimate," Ashley says, okay, and she is speechless. She says in confessional, the first thing that pops in her mind is why. She wasn't sure how she felt in the moment. Dimitri says he knows Ashley is disappointed, and the producer asks Dimitri if he feels any guilt about sleeping with Jocelyn without talking to Ashley first. Dimitri's response is, I don't know. And then he tries to philosophize and says he thinks he holds himself accountable by just being, and then he stops whatever bullshit he was going to spew, and he says, I don't know. The correct response for a man who puts his family and the mother of his kids ahead of what his dick wants and what he wants and what his ego wants wouldn't be, I don't know. A man that puts his family's wants ahead of his own self-interests wouldn't hesitate to say, yes, I feel guilty. I am accountable for this. They wouldn't respond with, I don't know, and attempt to come up with a deflection that he can't even complete, and then resort again to, I don't know. This shows you what it's all about for Dimitri. Ego and sex and selfishness and self-interest. It shows you the level of worth and value and respect he has for the mother of his kids as well, and for his kids and his whole family. And Ashley is currently pregnant with his third child with him. Dimitri is a shit person, in my opinion, and a manipulative chameleon with narcissistic traits. He groomed a younger girl, 14 years his junior. He plied her with alcohol, and he said all the right words grooming her, and he got his way. And he pleased himself, knowing he didn't care how Ashley felt, knowing how she would feel, so he only really considers himself, his ego, and his dick. And he waited till cameras were gone to do it, knowing it was wrong, and he tried to hide it from her, but he knew he couldn't lie. But if he really cared about his pregnant wife or his family, he would be able to put her feelings and their agreements and her trust in him ahead of what his dick wants. But that's just my opinion. He used Jocelyn like an object, and he doesn't value Ashley, or he would never do anything knowing it will affect her and hurt her and break her trust. He's a piece of shit, in my opinion. Anyways, Ashley asks Dimitri if he feels comfortable with that, meaning his cheating. And Dimitri says no, because when he and Ashley spoke, they talked about making sure they had a commitment first. But yesterday, everything felt magical. And he says, yeah. Ashley says they did talk about taking things slower, and that didn't happen. So she isn't sure what the future holds for the three of them together. Ashley asks, so now what? Dimitri says his plan moving forward is to make sure they are in agreement. And he says they can't move ahead of us. They have to take their time and make sure they understand what's happening, magic or no magic. Dimitri never took full accountability, and he never placed the blame fully on himself, and he never directly apologized for his behavior, at least on camera. Instead, he deflected, making sure Ashley knew they drank a lot and that Jocelyn took sake shots straight, as if it's something just a 22-year-old would do. It's actually normal, by the way, to chug like a shot of sake, particularly with a sake bomb, so he deflected everywhere, but directly on him, which is where he should have placed the blame, even blaming the magic, never blaming himself squarely. And I think it's interesting when the producer asked if he feels guilty, it wasn't an immediate yes or an acknowledgement of fault or wrongdoing. It was, I don't know. He can't be so brazen as to say no, of course, he doesn't feel guilty. He then says he thinks he holds himself accountable, but he never acknowledged it fully, and he never acknowledged it was his fault directly. He deflected a lot on the alcohol and magic, as if it removes his full accountability and fault and responsibility. But the magic and alcohol didn't directly put his penis inside another woman. He did that, and he is responsible and fully to blame for where his penis goes. And he never apologized or acknowledged how it hurt Ashley or affected her. Just saying you hold yourself accountable and I don't know if I feel guilty doesn't mean you have taken any accountability at all or that you're sorry at all. Ashley tells Dimitri one trip doesn't mean that you know a person, and intimacy is the easy part. She says this is the life that she has chosen and no one forced her into this, so she is very well aware her husband is going to be intimate with another person. She just would like to make sure that they both choose the person together. She thinks that's the hardest part to get past. Back to the Aldridges in Genola, Utah, Jeff says Vanessa's pregnancy is a good distraction from what they've just been through with Melina. Jeff says his experience as a polygamist is an interesting balancing act. Jeff says when one of his wives is pregnant, they need a little extra tender love and care. And thankfully, both Charisse and Vanessa have compassion when their sister wife is pregnant. Vanessa's midwife is showing up this morning, and today will be her first prenatal exam, and hopefully they will get to hear the heartbeat. She thinks she's around 12 weeks pregnant. The midwife, Sherry, comes over, and Vanessa explains it's pretty common for women in the lifestyle to choose a midwife. She says there's nothing like being at home in the environment that you've set up to give birth in and to have the care of a midwife who knows you on a personal level and who you've been able to make a connection with. Vanessa likes to have her kids right there when they first pick up the heartbeat because for them, that's the first moment the pregnancy really means anything for them. They don't get to feel what Vanessa feels as the pregnant one throughout the pregnancy, but they can hear that heartbeat. The whole family comes in to hear the heartbeat. The midwife can't hear the heartbeat, and Charisse holds Jeff's hand, looking on, and he kisses her hand. He's very affectionate with his wives. I know with the Browns, the wives don't show affection to Cody in a group setting, other than Robin, of course, but the Aldridges seem to do little touches here and there, and they seem to be completely fine with it. The midwife asks Vanessa if she has had a miscarriage before. She isn't hearing a baby. She isn't hearing a heartbeat. Vanessa says it seems so weird because obviously she's pregnant. The midwife says they didn't hear anything that would sound like a pregnancy today, but it's early, so that can be the reason why. She says her personal choice would be to go get an ultrasound and find out today how far along she is. Vanessa doesn't know how to make sense of it or what's going on in her body. She says obviously she's pregnant. Her belly is getting big and all the signs point to that. And so she is terrified because she knows that there's a slight possibility of a miscarriage at this point. But it's not what she was expecting at all. Jeff, her husband, is very sweet with her. He lays beside her and holds her hand, and everyone looks absolutely crushed, understandably. That ends the episode. Next time on Seeking Sister Wives, the Brynies are going camping, and Angela has mixed feelings about it. Arlie says things are so tense between April and Angela. Angela says April is controlling and bossy, and she comes across as disingenuous. Angela is in tears, telling Drew she doesn't know how to stop the patterns with April. Ashley would love to give Jocelyn an opportunity to come clean and own her choices. Ashley hopes Jocelyn will say something when the Snowdens go meet her about hooking up with Dimitri. And Ashley tells Dimitri if she doesn't say anything, it probably isn't going to work. They meet Jocelyn and Ashley asks what happened on their date. Jocelyn looks down scared. This isn't Jocelyn's fault. It's on Dimitri to be on the same page as his wife and control his own dick. He agreed with Ashley. Sex would happen with commitment, and he had sex pre-commitment on the first one-on-one date. And this isn't on Jocelyn, who is 22. This is on Dimitri, in my opinion. Anyways, that does it for this episode of Seeking Sister Wife. I don't know when I will do the next Seeking Sister Wife episode, but I will get to it eventually. Thursday at the latest, I'll put out episode 4 of Book Club, covering chapter 3 of Becoming Sister Wives, entitled Christine and Cody. And Friday or Saturday at the latest, I'll put out the next episode of My Sister Wives Rewatch, season 2, episode 5, Wife number 3 hits Sin City. Should be a good one. To my YouTube viewers, if you could please like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Also, please tell me your thoughts on all of the couples down below in the comment box. I'd love to hear your thoughts, as always, on Seeking Sister Wife. Thanks so much for listening. See you very soon. Bye.